Alright, for my second video today, and the first in the political discussions, I want to go over an idea in politics and in general theory about political science that most people understand that this is the axiom that politics are derives on, and that's the difference between it's called the Pareto principle or the Pareto efficiency curve, the Pareto distribution, and equity. In order to do this, I need to discuss both of these things individually and then come back together to bring them into one cohesive conversation and argument. So we're going to go ahead and start by talking about equity and equality. All right, so here I've pulled up a definition that's just pulled up from a Google search with social equity versus equality. I'm going to have to extrapolate on this quite a bit because this definition is not fairly adequate. It just goes over the very basics between the two words, making sure there's no equivocation. So it says here that equity is giving everyone what they need to be successful, whereas equality is treating everyone the same. That inherently is true. In order to frame this conversation, we need to talk about equity, not so much equality. In reality, equality is a byproduct of treating everyone with bodily autonomy and agency in a fair and appropriate manner, and that's something that should be given in all systems. So in the context of politics and in the conversation at hand, we're going to talk about equity. And for equity, we're going to go over here and we're going to show this thing here. This is also the difference. So equality is the equality of opportunity. So all people have the ability, all three of these people have the ability to stand on this crate and watch the game, quote unquote. All right. Whereas equity is giving the person that's shortest and the second shorter person these ways of making it so they can equally watch the game. So equity is equality of outcome, whereas equality is equality of opportunity. Now, this is important because this notion of equity, it's kind of like an underlying thing in the fabric of societies. And I'll have to, in order to explain that, I have to delve into the Pareto principle real quick. So one thing to note here is equity in the context of political science, in the context of what we're talking about, is actually more or less macroeconomics. Equity is the ability for someone to interact in the hierarchies given in a given system. And so for that, we're going to have to jump over to talking about hierarchies and then the Pareto principle. All right, so a hierarchy is there's a definition here, is an arrangement of items in which the items are represented as being above, below, or at the same level as one another. Hierarchies are a ranking system of phenomena that you will encounter. So a good example of this is they say a pecking order and so forth in businesses. If I go back here, pecking order, ranking, the ladder, and so on and so forth. I want to make it clear that hierarchies are not just for humans or anything like that. Hierarchies are naturally occurring things because you have to have some set criterion that establishes and evaluates things based off of some sort of metric such as success. Alright, so the Pareto distribution, which is named after the Italian civil engineer, economist, and sociologist Vilfredo Pareto, probably butchering that name, is a power law probability distribution. In statistics, that means that it just has this type of thing here. But for the context of what we're talking about, hierarchies in general and the dynamics of life, what this boils down to is that the amount of energy, resources, power, things, money that is controlled by individuals is going to be based off of competency. It's going to be based off of this principle of the 80-20 law. And it's commonly stated in businesses and elsewhere. It's true that in general you can assume that 80% of your production is going to be done by 20% of your things, 20% of your people, 20% of your infrastructure, so on and so forth. And that's just like the most common observation of this. There are a lot of other situations where this is true. In order to bring this into the discussion in politics, we have to understand that politics are multi-lifespanning like things. So the amount of power that your parents have is going to roughly determine the amount of success and equity that you naturally will have. And if you leave a system alone for n number of iterations, let's say generation is an iteration, eventually what will end up happening is you'll have the very top, the one percenters controlling the vast majority of the resources, which is what we're seeing now. You'll have a system where you can't actually have any movement up and down because all of the resources are controlled by the most competent. They're called the most competent because, in general, their families were, their predecessors were the most competent. They may or may not be the most competent or competent individuals. And the people that are born into relatively poor families or families that are not able to compete in that sense, they are in general going to be considered less competent, which is inherently a problem. When you take the individual into account with this, my lineage does not determine my competency. It may determine the rate at which I will become competent and may determine a lot of factors that are involved with that. I may have a leg up because of lineage, but I could be born to a extremely poor family and still have competence or IQ or whatever you want to use as a metric for this. I still have the ability, hard work and perseverance, the ability to interact with my peers and be successful, which is what competence is, and therefore climb the ladder. Now, this is important because the very notion of the Pareto principle is based off of the idea of equality. You'll have equal opportunity, but not equality of outcome. So, if you're born into an incredibly poor family or whatever, you're born into a situation where you don't have the leg up that your peers do. Yeah, technically you can do all the things that they can do, but without outside help, the chances of you being able to do that are very low. And this is the reason why social programs such as the education system are incredibly important. In fact, the education system is the number one equity engine that we have available to us. So, all right, now that I've gone over the distribution a little bit, we will go over some of these other things here real quick, and then kind of pull this conversation back into where it should be. Alright, so the Pareto efficiency or Pareto optimality is a state of allocation of resources from which it is impossible to reallocate so as to make any one individual or preference criterion better off without making at least one other individual preference criterion worse off. This is good for the system overall, but it's terrible for the individuals, especially those at the bottom. And kind of what it does is says, all right, the best way of maximizing a resource is by putting it with those that are competent. In order to take it away from those that are competent and give it to those that are in need, you will necessarily impact the efficiency of the system. This is like more or less the underlying argument for the conservative position that you should be rewarded for your efforts, right? So now we get into how this interfaces with politics. Someone that is conservative is naturally going to come to the conclusion they'll probably never understand these are related or even know about these. This is one of the inherent problems with politics, especially in the United States. They'll come to the conclusion that this maximal efficiency or optimality is the best conclusion that you can have and the best thing to do, and you should limit the amount of outside influence on it. That way you limit the loss of efficiency as much as possible. The other side of this argument is the argument that comes from equity. The ability for this individual here to compete with this individual here is frankly impossible in contextual relation to this fence without the assistance of something else such as these boxes. This is why we have social systems such as the education system. With the introduction of this Pareto efficiency and the social inequity that is a byproduct of Pareto efficiency and the Pareto distribution, you have this problem where if you let this situation play out to its end goal, yeah, you'll have Pareto efficiency. You'll have all the resources are being controlled by the most competent individuals and are being used the most efficient way possible. But the people at the bottom, the people that are being this guy right here, will see. So we'll use this one for example. We'll see that he has no way of competing with this person here ever, and eventually he'll just knock this person off, knock this fence over, and watch the ball game anyways. Because fuck it, why would he uphold your system? So in economic standpoint, in political standpoint, in civilizational standpoint, this person here will start riots and will overthrow the entire system. Will try to overthrow the entire system because they don't have the ability to play fair. They don't have the ability to reach this position here. And a lot of that comes from the fact that they were born into a shitty situation. And that's where you have something like the education system comes in. The education system attempts to even this playing field and gives this person here who, let's say this person is a competent poor person or someone that has the ability to actually climb the ladder. This person here is given the legs they need to in order to continue on in their situation. So the argument of politics really breaks down to this equilibrium of how much should we introduce equity into the system and how much should we honor Pareto efficiency. This efficiency here is the basis for how we succeed as a society, as any sort of hierarchy, how the hierarchy keeps its top. So if you let the efficiency take hold, and this is the only thing you consider, what will end up happening is you will be overthrown by the bottom side of your distribution. All these people down here will tell these people to fuck off and throw them out. This is what happened with the Bolshevik Revolution in not Soviet Union, but Russia, excuse me, and all sorts of other places. This is one of the things that was playing a part in China and a lot of other places. A lot of places institute socialism or communism. They do so because things like this happens. The robber barons in America, the breakups that but Teddy did, dealing with that, all have to play with this notion of these people are getting too powerful and they need to be usurped in some capacity. So you need to have equity in order to not have your system topple. It'll get too top heavy, and the bottom will refuse to support the top, and they'll just overthrow them. That's like the first thing that will happen. You can see this effect in dystopian future fiction that's written, and oftentimes the conclusion of the story will be this toppling of these systems because these people at the top have gotten too powerful. And that's the entire point of the book, or the medium, is to discuss things like this happening in this overthrowing. There's another type of dystopian future that needs to be considered, and it's the axonomical opposite of this type, and that's where you introduce so much equity that your system is too inefficient. It loses all of this efficiency, and it just topples over because it can't support itself. This is the main reason why communism is charged with killing hundreds of millions of people, is because the Bolshevik Revolution took over and threw out all the farmers that had any sort of success and replaced them with workers that didn't know how to farm, that didn't know how to handle those resources. Same thing happened with China. You had people that didn't understand how to deal with the situation, didn't care, didn't have any real incentive in order to work, and they starved. So you have two different sides of this argument. One is that when you have this distribution that reaches this number of iterations, and there's no real recourse for individuals to climb the ladder, so to speak, your system will be overthrown. And then the other part of that is that when you don't have enough incentivization for competency, and you don't have the ways for the Pareto efficiency or optimality to occur, your system will crumble on its own weight. So this is the difference between liberalism and conservatism, or progressivism and conservatism, is that progressives want to make sure that everyone has the ability to rise up the ladder and that there's equity as well as equality. Conservatism wants to keep the notion of this Pareto efficiency as much as possible, as well as make it so there's an incentive for people to actually do well. This forms the crux of most political arguments that are not hyperbolic or scarecrow arguments created by the other side. So you want to give people the incentive, you want to make it so the competent can actually use the resources and produce efficiency, and then on the other side you want to make sure that everyone has the ability to reach the top and introducing them. So this video is the start of of politics. Politics is a very dangerous game and very dangerous thing to talk about in general. And so we'll see how this goes. I'm not afraid to talk about dangerous things, obviously. I hope you like this video. If you do, please give it a like and give me a subscribe. And comment in the things down below if you think I'm wrong. Please let me know. I'd love to have a conversation about this. If there's some discrepancy you have, please let me know. If you have any ideas that you want me to go on in the future, I would also like to hear about that. I'm looking to actively engage with the community here on YouTube. Thank you so much. Have a good one.